Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes, so everyone can go ahead and get in here. Okay, we'll be starting in about 2 minutes. Just for those, just to be clear, I'm Bree. I'm going to be doing the studio review tonight instead of Kyle. Feel free to stop me for questions and ask for input. Is this legible? Can you all see this? Feel free to talk as well. Is this big enough for y'all?
Yeah.
Actually, if you could make it just a smidge bigger, please.
How's that?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if I can go bigger. Let's see. I can, but that's too big. There we go.
I made my screen a bit bigger as well, so that's fine.
Okay, if this works, great. I can go bigger if you really need me to. But I have a very big screen, so when I go big, it's big. I use a 30-inch 4K monitor, so it's like very clear and very big. Okay, so tonight's studio is, we can go ahead and start. Tonight's studios is Fetch and Json. We're going to build a website that shows astronauts fetch from an API. So the first thing we need to do is fork the repository to our own GitHub account. I already went ahead and did that because I'm not actually able to fork because I have this on my past one. So this is the starting. So what we start with 3 files. Index.html. This came from the repo. This is all it is. Then we start with script.js. And then we start with style.css. These are the 3 files that we have. So our requirements are to add code that runs on the window load event, make a GET request using fetch, and add each astronaut return to the web page. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and start. If anyone has questions, let me know. Go ahead and stop me. I know I can go a little fast sometimes, and I'm pretty blunt and straight to the point. So if you want more detail or you want to know why I do something, feel free to stop. So we start with our window.load event. Oh, actually, I did that all wrong. We start with a window.addListener. Add event listener, and then we do load. And then we give it a function. So what this does, well, if I don't capitalize it, this makes sure that this does not run until the function is up and running. So we have to do this to make sure that it doesn't try to run our code ahead of time. So now we want to fetch. Our next step of the studio is to make our GET request from the Astronauts API. So when we start with the fetch. And then, oh, sorry, don't type that. Fetch dot, and then, sorry. Oh, not dot, there we go. Fetch, and then we type in the link. There's a few ways to do this. It's just fetching whatever we're supposed to fetch. In this case, it's a link, and our link is this long link. So if you don't have it, it's in the book. Goes right here. Why is there an error? It's weird. I'm not sure what's going on there. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the way fetches work, we do two things with fetches. We fetch data. Then we return the data. So after the fetch, we do a then. And within the then, we have to run our function that happens. So it goes function, then response, because that's what's being passed to it. And the response is just what's happening. It's a little more detail. If you have questions about it, ask me after, and I'd be happy to go into details here. Response.json. Right? However, we have to return this because if we just type response.json, nothing happens. So we need to return this back to the then, and then we close it out. That's our first part. So we fetched, now we've returned the data. At this point, nothing else is happening. So we have to do something with the data. So we need another then, in which here we just need a function that's using what we returned. And what we returned is JSON. So we're going to create the variable JSON. Then we're going to go ahead and make our function, right? Now, just to make sure that our code is working, we're going to go console.log JSON. And we're going to save. We're going to go here and we're going to save. And then we're going to look at our code real quick. And we're going to F5. Oh, I don't know. That was weird. Okay. Now we're going to inspect. We'll go to console. And we'll see that it printed out right here. That's probably awfully small for y'all. There we go. Is that better? Yes?
Yes, that's
Yes,
good,
it
Bree.
is.
Okay. So this is the JSON that we're fetching. It's an object of objects, or it's an array of objects. So that's what we're fetching. So this is what we're working with. This will be our data. These will be our properties: ID, active, first name, last name, skills that we can't see, a picture, right? So this is all of the information that we're going to be manipulating. Anytime you fetch anything, this is going to come in. These are what APIs return. So we have now completed the first two steps. The first requirement and the second requirement, right? So now what we want to do is we actually want to start doing something. We want to add each astronaut return to the web page. So it gives us an HTML template, right? So we need to use this as a template to build dynamically for each astronaut return for the API. So the first thing we need to do here is we need to find this information and find where we're going to put this information, right? We need to know exactly where it's going to be. So luckily, we have this great thing called div, which is ID container. So we need to get that element. Does anyone know how we do that? There's a few ways to do this. I'm going to use document.getElement by ID. You can also use a query selector. Right, and then we have a container. Now, what we need to be able to do is we need to store this information somewhere because we're creating code, right? So we're going to make a blank variable here called astronauts, and we're just going to set it to an empty string. This is going to be our HTML code, and we're going to store all of the astronaut data into it. So our template is going to go into that. So now we want to loop through our function or through our JSON. So we're going to go for let astronaut of JSON. This gives us each array element. So it's each astronaut. So now we have div and this class is going to be astronaut. And then we have div and this class is bio. So right now I'm just typing out the code that it gives us. And then we've got 3 li. Okay, and so I think we need an image code here. So yeah, we'll do, is that it? Does it have class? Yeah, so it goes image class avatar. And then it's gonna go, we're gonna have to fetch that. So we're not there yet. We'll just leave that blank for right now. So this is our basic thing, right? Any questions so far? Let me know if I'm going too fast. So what went here was a name. So we're just gonna go just some boilerplate. First name and then last name went here. And then hours in space. And then active. And skills. And then if you remember, if we go back to our code or to our image, we can go ahead and look at what we have. Each array has a picture. So we're just going to change source to picture for right now. Source, picture. So we need to loop through astronaut. So astronaut is our name. So if we just go ahead and make a template variable. Right. So we're just adding our details at this point. Now, something I did miss, unfortunately, is all of this needs to be a string. They're going to give us an error. That's okay. Because what we need to do with it is we need to show it somewhere. So remember how we created astronauts. So we're going to set astronaut to this. So astronauts is going to equal to this string. Now, if we just set it to this string once, it's just going to reset itself every time we move. But we don't want to do that. We want it to be able to rotate. We want every time for it to add. So we use the plus sign, right? Equals plus right there. That's all we do. Also, this is all breaking because we need this thing. There we go. Has to be a template literal. Any questions? Am I moving too fast? Anyone concerned? Feel free to talk. I don't mind explaining things. It's kind of a short studio. Everyone good?
Yep, we're good.
Wonderful. I'm going to keep moving. So hours in space. So that's just, as you remember, the template literal. That was just astronaut. Hours in space, I think. And then active was active. And skills was. Now, the thing with this one, if we just do skills, right? It's not going to print in a really clean way, is it? So we can go ahead and look at what we have now. Oh, did I save it? Maybe I didn't save it. I saved it. Oh, so now nothing's actually going to change because we're not actually updating it. So after our for loop down here, we need to take that container that we looked for, dot inner HTML, and we're just going to set it equal to astronauts. So what we have is we fetch a code. We then return the code. Then we take what we returned and we mess with it. So we printed it out so we could see it. We found the element that we want to add the code to. We create an empty object to store our template into. Now we're cycling through our JSON. Now we're taking the template, putting in the JSON code and storing it into astronauts. And then after that, we are storing astronauts into our container that we found on line 6. So when we go to this now, oh, error file not found. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So it's undefined. There's a bunch of errors so far. Probably because I bet I didn't camel case. So hours in space worked, false worked, and skills works. Now the thing about skills though is there's no space between that, is there? It just prints a comma. So we want to make that look a little cleaner. So we're going to go ahead and do that real quick, and we're going to finish up with the rest. So let's go ahead and fix this. Name. Name. Now, in order to do the skills, we're just going to type in a simple join, comma, space, and that's going to make it look a little cleaner. And then for source, all we're going to do is astronaut.picture. We'll refresh. We'll check for errors, no errors. This is all we've got. Okay, so we have hours in space. We have the space, the skills, all of that's done. So that is our studio. That's the beginning of it. So now we have some bonus missions, right?
I have a question for you if I can jump in. In the studio instructions, it said to put the HTML inside the div container, which will be in the index.html, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work.
So on line 6, we find the container, right? In our JavaScript,
Right.
Then on
Right.
line 9, we take that HTML and we put it in the astronauts variable, right?
Mm.
On line 21 is when we set the container HTML to our astronauts variable. So
Okay.
line 21 is what's putting it inside the HTML for us.
Okay, so it says all HTML created should be added to the div ID equals container tag. So doing that does not mean actually go to index.html.
It does not.
Okay. All right,
Because
that's
that
what.
won't work.
confused me.
That won't
All
work.
right, yeah, I couldn't get to work.
Yeah.
All right.
Because it's not dynamic. HTML isn't dynamic on its own. You've got to use JavaScript. So line 6 grabs the container for us. Line 7 gives us the empty variable to store it. Then line 9 stores everything in there. And line 21 takes the HTML here that we just wrote and store it in this loop and then puts it inside the container. So it's line 21 doing all the work for us. So I don't think yes.
I assumed that I needed to do a typical for loop in line 8. And then every time I did something, it was like astronaut index I dot first name. But you're just doing a for in.
I'm doing a for of.
A for of. Okay. I
So
don't know
a
what this is.
So a for in returns the index number, right? So if you go for I in JSON, I is going to be 0, 1, 2, whatever your index number.
Okay. Yeah.
A for of returns the actual object or variable or whatever exists within the array.
For of. Okay. I just need to do some research on this.
Yeah. So in this case, I don't have to use an index because astronaut is the variable. So if it was a string,
Yeah.
I would just be able to return astronaut because I don't have to go back to JSON index I. Astronaut is the actual variable. It takes whatever the first element in the array is for the of and or the object and stores it into astronaut.
That's
so
cool.
if we go back to this and we pull this up, every time we loop through each index, it takes this whole thing here and stores that as astronaut.
Well, that's hot tamale. All right.
Yeah, so it's a little easier to read. It's easier to follow. There's less numbers. There's less eyes.
Okay.
So that's
I saw that and I thought, he's not writing Python, is he? This is confusing.
Nope. That is
That's
not what I'm doing.
That's in the section on objects. If in our book too, if you wanted to review it. So I remember that from that. It goes more into that. So
I use it all the time. Anyone in my cohort, in my group, will know that I harp on it because it's going to be easier for you to find your.
Yeah.
errors.
I don't remember the text talking about the for of loop, just the for
It's
in
very
loop.
short. Very short. It's
Gotcha.
not very long.
I'll go find it.
So
look in the objects chapter.
Okay.
I'm over here like talking with my hands and my camera's not even on. Okay.
Bree, when do you have office hours?
My office hours are by request and sometimes on Tuesdays.
Okay. Okay.
I'm available anytime after 7 during the week and before 10 in the morning on days besides Monday and Thursday.
Okay. Okay.
So as long as you ask 24 to 48 hours in advance, I can generally make it work.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And then Tuesday nights, I do shared office hours with Corey, but I don't show up unless someone pops in and asks Corey for me. And then Corey will let me know and I'll show up.
Okay.
But Corey's always there. So we're going to move into the bonus missions now. It wants us to display the astronauts sorted from most to least time in space. So how do we do that? Any idea?
I believe you will probably want to use like a for loop just for the hours in space object.
Why would we use a for loop?
Well, I know we would need a function inside. That's for sure. Or I'm thinking I don't know. I'm thinking more along the lines of probably putting the hours in space into an empty array, and that's what I would use the for loop for.
Okay, so what what I think what we need to do is we need to sort JSON, right? So we need to do a JSON.sort. That's what we need to do, because the for loop just goes through and grabs what's on top. So right now, if we look through our, oh no, where is it? Oh, I lost it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so if we look through here, it just has them in ID order, right? ID 1 through 7. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back and we're gonna sort this. Now, does anyone remember the sort function? So we want to create a function inside of sort. It's been a while since I've done it this way. This might be wrong. Then we want to go a dot hours in space greater than b dot hours in space. Right now, I'm gonna do this one way, and I'll go through and I'll explain it if we get confused. Okay, so what this is doing is this is comparing, oh, there needs to be a column here. So this is a return statement. And this is a ternary statement. It's like an if-else statement. Y'all should have went over this at some point. Basically, it says, if this is true, return this. If this is false, return this. So what's happening is if A is greater, it returns 1, so it puts it in front. If B is greater, it returns -1, so A goes behind it. That's basically what's happening here. So if we save, we'll go back to our code. We'll refresh, make sure I didn't break anything. And we'll see that now they're in a completely different order, right? Oh, well, that's because I did it wrong. So it's actually least from greatest. My apologies, everyone. So we'll want to go back and fix that, because it's supposed to be greatest to less, right? Yeah, most to least. That is an easy fix, though. So all we'll do is we'll just flip it that way, save it. And we'll see now it's greatest to least. Right? Any questions so far? We're good?
I think it's good. Doing a good job.
Good, good. Okay, give me 1 second. What's this next part? Let's see. Oh, I haven't done this one for a while. Give me 1 second. Okay, so then our next, what is our next one? I lost all my tabs. Okay, so we want the make active true text green for astronauts that are still active. Active is true, right? So does anyone have any idea how we might do that?
I was trying to make a if statement work for it.
Okay, where would you put that if statement?
So I started trying to put the if statement above the for of loop, but I put it on above the I put it basically in between the for of and the variables.
So you put it between the for of and the variables, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so what is a, oh, I'm blanking. This thing called?
String literal.
Just string literal. What do string literals do?
They're placeholders for the information that you're bringing in. But if, as Jason was saying, if he puts it up above there, this part, like where you have highlighted, hasn't been generated yet, correct?
Correct. But okay,
Okay.
so it's not a placeholder. A string literal evaluates the code inside of it.
Okay.
So unless I'm way off on my JavaScript, which I might be, I'm pretty sure we can throw an if statement in here. So what we'll do is we'll go style. It's been a while since I've done this. So we'll go style equals color. And so we'll go if. So now we're inside where if astronaut dot active, right? And that's a true false. So we could do this if and then open this up, but that's going to be a big thing. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to remove that. You remember this ternary that I did? We're going to do that again. Astronaut dot active. If it's true, we're going to return green. If it's false, we're going to return black. Following so far?
That's some voodoo right there. I think you're working some magic on us, because that is exactly what I was trying to
that
think
broke.
through,
That
but
broke a
could
lot
not
of
get
stuff.
it.
That broke a lot. Let's see. What did I do? Shouldn't have broke anything.
Should there be the extra active astronaut.active? Do we need two?
Yeah, those are two different things.
Astronaut.active.
One of these is checking that. One of these is doing an if statement while the other
Is the actual
yeah.
data. Okay.
It looks like you have an opening quotation right before color on line 17, but I don't see a closing one.
There we go. That's 100% probably what broke it. Okay. That's definitely what it was. And there we go. We'll see it's true right there. How it turned green. Any questions about that? I'm sure there might be some. Go ahead and ask or.
Can I see the code again?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to recap, a string literal is not a placeholder. It evaluates code within the string, which gives you full control to run code inside of that string literal. Just remember that it needs to return something, right? So that string literal is going to return whatever's happening there. So we want it to be a string. So if we're running code like a function, or you kind of can treat it like a function where it goes return this. So it's going to return whatever it is. So there needs to be some kind of code in there to evaluate where it returns something. So in this case, we have an if statement, whether it's green or black.
Is there something where you could just have the default, because the default is black. So instead of actually specifying black, just leave it as the default?
Not in this case, no, because in this case, we're setting style equals color. So
Okay.
if we were to just remove this, color is going to be blank, which I actually think will work, but that's bad coding to have style and not have something set to it.
Okay.
Because the style, basically, the style will be color is green or color is black. And if we're setting any attribute at all, we want it to actually be set to something. Because theoretically, we could go here and then add another style and go font size or background or whatever or size after this. And so if that was empty for default, it just wouldn't work. Okay, and then that is the second one. What's this third one? Add a count of astronauts to the page. Okay, well, let's look at our index.html. So let's look at this page real quick. Where should we add a count? Where do y'all think this count should go?
Right next to the astronauts header.
Want to put it up there?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's figure out where that is. That is H1. So we're going to have to do something a little different here for H1. We can go ahead and do a p tag, and we're going to go ID equals count. This may not work though. We may want to do another H1. Let's do another H1. Right, and now we're gonna go ahead and do like that, just to test that it works. Oh, no, that definitely does not do what we want. So astronauts count. So we want to add it right after here, right?
I would have accepted the way you just had it, but yeah, this works too.
What did you say? You would have done it that
I
way?
said I would have accepted the way you just had it, but this way works too. As long as it's a count up there, I'll take it as a win.
So what we're gonna do?
What about if you're just going to add it to the div that you currently have? Like if you're just going to add it, say, to the top or the bottom of the current container, can you just do, you know, my container dot inner HTML, you know, plus equal JSON dot length?
Yeah, we could definitely. We could, but we want to make it clean. So with this, if we would have to go plus that, right? And then add whatever HTML code that we were doing. So whatever, because we want it inside something. So I'll show you real quick what we do here, because we're going to go ahead and grab that count. So we'll let count equals dot get count. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go and then we'll do a string literal, and all we're going to do is that's it. So now we'll go back and do it the other way. Oh, that totally didn't work. What happened here? Oh, my bad. It still didn't work. It should have worked. Oh, I removed the count. My bad. So we have to name that count. ID count, and now it will work. So astronaut count 7. So if you wanted it at the bottom of your container, like you were saying, right? What we would do here is we would go plus because this is what you were asking, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you would do it right like this. But someone said at the top, so I was putting it at the top first, and we would just go JSON.link. But we would have to put this in that. So now when we refresh, it's going to put it right there. Any questions? Anyone need to see code?
Can you jump back to your code one more time? Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Did I go too
And
fast?
to fix the order by descending, would you just swap that A and B around?
No, you would just change this. Oh, just change your sign. So just change if you're using less than or greater than. You always want A to be first when you're using A's and B's. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing. If anyone has any other questions they want to ask me tonight, I'm also going to stop recording. But I'll be here for like 10 more minutes.